When it was launched at the 1999 Frankfurt Motor Show, the Audi A2 was a truly advanced little car. In fact, it was so cutting edge that 2 decades on, it's almost as though its time still hasn't come yet. In this Car Gurus video, we're going to celebrate 20 years of the Audi A2 by taking a closer look at this fascinating little car, as well as seeing how it has stood the test of time. Before we do that, here is a quick reminder to like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll never miss one of our videos. Right, on to the A2, my A2 in fact, because I bought this car a couple of years ago when I needed a cheap runaround, and to be honest, I've always been fascinated by the A2. I think the design and construction is really interesting, and I think it's aged incredibly well. Furthermore, although it was far from a sales hit when new, the thinking behind it is as relevant today as it ever was. That being to build a small car that was incredibly lightweight and efficient while still being roomy on the inside and with the kind of upmarket build quality and image that Audi buyers expected. The design language of the A2 very much aligns it with other Audis of the era, in particular the TT, things like the headlight design and these bulging wheel arches, but it's actually in the construction that this car is particularly interesting. These panels are aluminium to save weight. Now that was unheard of on Superminis at the time, and it is still unheard of on Superminis today just because it's so expensive to do. Also, rather than having a traditional monocoque, the A2 has what is basically an aluminium space frame. Again, it saves weight, it allows them to be clever with the packaging. If you zoom in here, there's a nice little badge saying Audi Space Frame. Now this was kind of like Audi taking its tech from the flagship A8 and applying it to a Supermini, and that also allowed it to completely rethink the packaging and how small cars could be used. So one of the things they did is said, well, owners don't really need to open the bonnet, but if they want to check the fluids, you've got a dipstick there with this flap, you can top up the oil and the screen wash. Obviously you can take the bonnet off, but as an owner, you weren't expected to do that. Audi said that the aluminium space frame weighed 40% less than an equivalent steel monocoque, and so even when it had its aluminium body panels, its engine and its single windscreen wiper in place, the A2 will still tip the scales at comfortably under 1,000 kilograms. Another clever bit of packaging in the A2 can be seen here when you get in the back, because the floor in this car is lower in the back than it is in the front, and what that does is it makes it much roomier for passengers in the rear, because, take me for example, I'm 5'11" and the driver's seat is set for me. My feet go right under the seat here, which means it feels much more spacious than other small cars do. Headroom is fine, it's quite a tall car. Worth noting about the A2, most had 2 seats back here, so they're 4-seaters, but Audi did offer a 3rd seat as an option, which this car has. There was further innovation in how those rear seats could be folded, tipped, or even removed completely in order to optimize the available space. Sticking with practicality, let's have a quick look at boot space, because again, Audi has done the packaging of this car in such a way that you get more room here than you would in most other Superminis. That's in the standard configuration, and it's pretty good. You can also, if you wish, tip this backrest forward. That frees up a bit more space. Obviously it's not so good for rear passengers, but it's a neat feature. And there is a false boot floor that lifts up, and there's a fair bit more space under there, whether it's for a spare wheel or extra luggage. In the front, the A2 feels spacious, and the build quality in here is amazingly good, really. Audi always said that the A2 was a small Audi and not a cheap one, and so the fixtures and fittings were kind of to the same standard with the same satisfying action as you would find in larger Audis. Plus, it stood the test of time. This one has done 61,000 miles now, and it feels really solid and robust. And it's got modern features, so you could get cruise control on an A2, for example. This one doesn't have it, but we have got climate control. That all still works. It's got ABS brakes, airbags, and even these neat little cup holders still work just fine. When Audi first showed the A2 in concept form, it was powered by a revolutionary 3-cylinder engine with 5 valves per cylinder. Now, when the production cars came around, that engine made way for more conventional 1.4 litre petrol or 1.4 litre diesel. And then later there was a 1.2 litre diesel in a car where weight had been further optimised in order to make it as efficient as possible. And as a result, that car could do 100 kilometres on 3 litres of fuel. That's about 94 miles per gallon, although it should be noted it was never sold in the UK. Final engine to be offered, and the one powering my A2, is a 1.6 litre direct injection petrol. This 1.6 produces 110 horsepower in such a light car. That's enough to give it pretty sprightly performance. It'll get from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 9.7 seconds, but it also is very tractable. It pulls well from very low revs. It should be noted though that within the A2 community, the 1.6 does have something of a reputation for being more finicky than either of the 1.4 litre engines. That said, since I've owned this car, other than having to replace a couple of coil packs, it's been really good, he says, crossing his fingers. While the engines might be good, however, there wasn't much praise heaped upon the ride and handling when the A2 was new. It's true that the A2's ride can be crashy, particularly at low speeds, and despite being so light, it's certainly no sports car to drive. There's too much body lean and the steering is really completely free from any feel. However, given its age, it's amazing how refined and easy to drive this car is. The gear shift is nice and slick, the engine's quiet, and it's absolutely fine on a long journey. Now, if you go for a diesel-powered A2, they are much more rattly to drive, but they also have their own really loyal following because they're not only extraordinarily economical, but they're also very durable. It's not uncommon to see A2 diesels that have more than 150,000 miles on the clock. One thing worth noting about A2s is that the aluminium panels can be expensive to repair, which is perhaps one of the things that has suppressed values for these on the used market. You can, for example, pick up a high mileage one for less than £1,000, and even the best one owner, low mileage, full service history A2s are rarely advertised for more than £5,000. Look, some people might always regard the A2 as a bit of a sales flop that played second fiddle to the Mercedes-Benz A-Class. However, I can't help thinking that the packaging and the way the design has stood the test of time mean that if you could somehow beef up the safety standards and fit an electric drivetrain, this thing would be just about perfect for 2019. Whether it's an A2 that takes your fancy or any other car, be sure to check out cargurus.co.uk to find great deals from top-rated dealers. Plus, please do subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can see when our new videos go live.